Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Maryland Recycling Network's webinar on Arlington's on-street food scrap collection bins for multifamily residents webinar. My name is Peter Houstel. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Recycling Network, and we'll soon be joined by Erik Grabowsky and Adam Riedel from the Arlington County's Environmental Services Department. They'll help us learn how Arlington County provides access to composting for their multifamily residents. But before we go there, let's take a minute to look at what's upcoming on our calendar. On Monday, June 9th, we'll be returning to the Turf Valley Conference Center for the 2025 MRN Swana Mid-Atlantic Annual Conference. We're working on the program and we'll have a preliminary schedule on the website probably by late January, early February. Exhibit sales are available now and registration will be open soon, so be sure to check out the website for details. We're also working on webinars regarding operational safety, food scraps diversion, drop-off centers, and how we use volunteers. These will be coming to a screen near you in 2025. On the admin side of things, please feel free to post any questions or comments in the chat box, and we'll be posting a recording of the webinar after the event, which you're welcome to share with any and all who might be interested. So, while most of these programs are free, they depend on the financial support of our members. So let me start by offering a big thank you to all of our current members. Though, as I'm sure you've heard me say many times before, we don't have any non-members. We just have paying members and non-paying members. So if you're one of those non-paying members, please head over to our website after this program and join today. You can become a paying member for as little as $25 a year. That's like 50 cents a week. So thank you. And speaking of support, I want to give a big shout out to our sustaining and patron members whose contributions, along with that of all our members, help us continue to support your efforts to drive reduction, reuse, and recycling in Maryland. Okay, without further ado, it's time to turn the mic and the screen over to Erik and Adam so they can share the Arlington County story with you. Erik, Adam?
Peter, thank you very much. So please let me know when you can see my screen.
Looks good to me. Looks good to everybody else?
Well, first, I just want to thank you, Peter, and also the Maryland Recycling Network for inviting us. And again, I just want to ask or wish everybody a happy belated America Recycles Day. With me is Adam Riedel. He's the manager of our environmental management office, and he's going to be monitoring the chat, and he'll answer some questions that are simple as far as that don't require a verbal response. So with that, I am going to go ahead and start talking about Arlington's on-street food scraps collection pilot program. A lot of this data you're all aware of. Again, we know that a large amount of the food supply goes wasted each year. We know it costs people money between $1,500 and $1,800 a year for a family of four. We also know that it wastes a lot of resources, the land, the water, energy, and chemicals associated with just the producing or production of the food. And we also know that the best way to not waste food is not to purchase it or not generate it in the first place. And then we also realizing that composting is the best alternative for managing food waste as opposed to landfilling or incineration. And we also know that, we have to look at different options, and on-street food scraps collection is just one way for us to manage that food waste. So back in June, our board adopted our solid waste management plan / zero waste plan. This is a 20-year planning document that's required by the state of Virginia. Back in 2015, our county board also adopted a zero waste resolution that said the county wanted to divert 90% of its waste from either landfilling or incineration by 2038. So for the 2 years prior to the adoption in June, we had a citizen advisory committee meet to kind of like, let's figure out how we're going to get to 90% diversion, which, as everybody knows, is a huge lift. And really, it's almost an aspirational goal for us. So a lot of it had to do with people just using the systems that currently exist. We require all our multifamily, commercial, and residential properties to have recycling systems in place to be able to recycle. And what we find is people don't necessarily use those as well as they could. But we also found that organics makes up a significant part of our waste stream, as you all are aware. And so that's something this pilot program is really designed to target. Another aspect of this is we had timelines for various things. And for the first 5 years of this plan since it was adopted. Because we don't have direct authority from the state of Virginia, because we're a Dillon Rule state, we had to figure out creative ways to get people to do this. So whether it be just in, basically incentivizing people, volunteering people, different groups volunteering to do organics or, collection as far as food scraps, the county decided to pilot this program just as make people aware of what's going on and demonstrate that the multifamily property occupants can in fact manage their food scraps. So this campaign for the on-street food scraps collection program is actually being done in relationship also to an avoid food waste campaign. So we have done a lot of signage. They're on our buses. They're in all of our bus stops. They're actually on e-boards on some of the red top cabs in the county. We have a whole bunch of posters we created. We've started a social media campaign and a video campaign. We have street signs that are out. We updated our websites, and we've created some videos program that you will see here shortly. So the on-street pilot drop-off program. So again, as I said before, we want to go to comprehensive organics management. We're basically requiring everybody in the county to have a program that collects food waste. We're not there yet, so we're kind of in this voluntary area now. So a majority of our population lives in multifamily properties. We have about 89,000 units in the county. There are about 35,000 or so single family and duplexes in the county. So you can see a majority of the housing units are in fact multifamily properties. And so this pilot's really evaluating whether we can get people to use a relatively convenient program to really serve that 70% of the population that lives in. Hello? Oh, I just heard something. The 70% of the population that lives in those residencies. So it's going to allow us to determine whether these programs can be successful, whether people will use them, the types of containers that we purchased, whether or not they're viable, whether our staff can actually effectively deal with this, and whether our communications are effective in getting the actions that we're desiring. So we have smart bin technology, and the reason we decided to go this direction is we did not want these food scrap collection containers to be used as trash cans or recycling containers. So it does require someone to basically use their phone to access the container. And then if they're close enough, they just push the open button and the lid will allow it to be opened. This, through cellular technology, allows us to record data as far as fullness levels and when they're open, and a variety of other things as far as who is actually registering based on their IP address for their phone. So it's a smart container that gives us a lot of data. So here's what is basically provided by the provider of the containers. You can see the app on the left-hand side of the screen. It shows where these containers are located. It has a color code. Green means they're fully available. Brown means they're filling up. And red means they are secured or closed because they are full. So people can actually, before they go to see if they're going to use one of these containers, actually can assess whether it's basically they can use it or not. And then there's a whole bunch of metrics and data that's collected on the back end. The way this thing was done from a procurement perspective, we did use our litter grant money that's provided by the state. We contacted our Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, and they allowed us to use the funds for this purpose. We had an invitation to bid to go out to actually was our purchasing mechanism. The specifications that you draft are critically important as far as the number of units. We actually have a second internal liner. All these containers come with an internal liner to actually collect the material. We are using kind of a swap out program, and I'll describe that a little bit later. The wrapping of the design, your software subscription, delivery costs. So all these things are important when you're actually putting this bid together, including training and the warranty component to make sure they are servicing them for at least a period of time. So the way our construct looks like, we have 14 geographically dispersed containers. As I said before, they are smart containers. We use our county litter staff, and they manage the containers that are actually in their dedicated zones. We have 7 litter collection zones in the county, and that individual is also responsible for managing the big bellies in their zone. We're doing ongoing outreach and education just to see if we're making a difference over time because we're tracking all the data. And then basically we're going to develop what are the best principles and practices as far as how to utilize this program for implementation in the future. So as far as the placement criteria, we want to make sure that we are putting these cans where the multifamily properties were. The higher the density, the better. We want to put them where people naturally congregate, such as bus shelters or metro stations or those kinds of things. We were concerned about equity as far as making sure that we are servicing a wide swath of the county's population to include lower income. Our initial construct for this, because we were so concerned about containers not necessarily working, we went with a redundancy construct where we actually had 2 containers located next to each other. It turns out that that interferes with the RFID and opening of the containers, and the manufacturer did not realize this at the time. So it was basically reporting that the containers could not open. And as a result, we quickly removed containers so they were no longer co-located. There was just one container, and we just relied on them being, reliable. And we also are putting a majority of these on the public right-of-way in the sidewalk area. And so we wanted to make sure we weren't drilling holes into the sidewalk. So we actually poured concrete pads and we drilled the containers into the concrete pad so we can locate these pads and the containers in anywhere throughout the county. And you can see a picture here. You can see the concrete base on the bottom. We have a custom wrap. The thing about the custom wrap, you want it dense enough so people don't think it's a graffiti target. Because if there were a lot of white space on that green background, potentially we'd have people, tag it. We haven't had any problem with that, so that's good. One of the innovations we did is you can see there's a bag dispenser on the front of that container. That was not what came with the container. That's something we added after the fact. Just reading a lot of the research, the more convenient you make it for people, the more likely they are to do it. And so rather than sending a whole bunch of biodegradable bags to different people who may or may not use them, we basically just say, hey, when you bring your bag down, just take a new one back with you and use it that way. And I think that's been one of the big things that's made our program pretty successful. So this is the wrap. You can see it. We're not talking about compost because obviously this isn't compost. The city of New York kind of made that problem. They have the big words compost on the front of their container. We want to make sure people understood it's really food scraps they're putting in these things and not compost, because compost is what's created at the end of this. And so that's what our wrap around our containers looks like. This was the initial deployment. We had 7 locations where, again, they were co-located. So you can see that was the initial distribution. You can see also our void food waste sign in the left-hand side of that bus shelter. And then you can see a poster talking about the on-street food scrap container on the right-hand side of the bus shelter. And then you can see the 2 containers there. They are solar powered, so from the electronics perspective. So when we're trying to figure out what to do with these things, we have a lot of good GIS data that allows us to look at where our commercial corridors are and where our people are located. We can drill down into specific buildings, and we know the number of units that exist in each one of our buildings. And as a result, we can get very, say, hey, if we located here and we want a quarter-mile circle around this bin, how many people can we actually impact? And we would know the number of housing units that we could service. And so then after we relocated, this was where we are currently. These are the 14 different can deployments. You can see they're heavily concentrated in one of our commercial corridors. That's the Ballston area. The 2 purple surrounded locations are actually at 2 of our drop-off centers in the county. And so people just, again, it's another people where people congregate, and whether they're bringing us mixed materials or cardboard, they can now bring us their food scraps, and that's proven to be effective as well. So we've also talked about follow-on phases of this. Right now we have 14 locations. We may redeploy one of those containers from an area that makes more sense. We are looking to add another potential 16 containers. The first phase would be 10, and then in the follow-on would be 6 more. And you could see at that point, we would serve about 43,000 of the 89,000 apartments in Arlington County. That has not been decided yet. We do have some recycling grant money that could allow us to buy those containers, but we're really trying to figure out if in fact the current program is being successful as we want it to be. So we're waiting and holding off a little bit on future deployments. So we also have some info cards that we've created, posters we've created. We give these at various tabling events. We have an Arlington art group that actually goes and does a lot of environmental programming, and they've been very good about doing a lot of tabling and giving out a lot of this information to people. We did get some free caddies that we make available when we have events, whether it be the county fair. We do an event called the Rock and Recycle event, where we invite people to come down to the Solid Waste Bureau and see what the programs we offer. And we were offering those free to anybody in a multifamily property who then could go to the container, pull off one of the biodegradable bags, and use that on their kitchen sink or wherever they chose to in their apartment. So we also made some videos, and I'm going to show you and share one with you, and here it is.
In Arlington County, we're committed to tackling the serious global problem of food waste and improper disposal, throwing food scraps in the trash. That's why we are excited to introduce an on-street food scraps collection pilot for Arlington residents in some multifamily neighborhoods. Consumers play the biggest role in minimizing wasted food. Simple tips like planning meals in advance, shopping with a list, and using leftovers creatively go a long way to prevent food waste. But what should we do once food waste is generated? In Arlington, we're committed to doing the best for our environment. To help us achieve our goal, we're placing on-street collection bins in some multifamily neighborhoods to increase our ability to compost food scraps and prevent waste. Expanding on food scrap and yard waste collection from single-family homes, this new pilot program will deploy 14 on-street food scraps collection bins in 7 areas of the county. Each easy-to-use on-street collection bin will divert food waste from incineration and landfills, turning it into nutrient-rich compost. A downloadable app provides access to the bins, shows their locations, availability, and what items can be deposited. Once you arrive at a bin, simply use your phone to unlock it, open the lid, deposit your food scraps, and close the lid. It's that easy. The next time you are ready to toss food scraps, remember food isn't trash. If it grows, it can be composted. Do your part to help Arlington become a sustainable, zero-waste community. Don't trash food scraps. Compost them using the on-street food scraps collection bins.
All right, so we just want to shout out to our communications group who put that together. That is actually a very affordable method to communicate. It would cost us less than $1,000 to put that together. So again, that's something that's out there, and we've used that for a variety of different campaigns to educate our population about some of the programs we're doing. So as far as the timeline, we actually deployed the containers on July 9th. We redeployed the 7 from, those initial 7 locations in early August. We developed our education materials and continue to refine and revise those. So this campaign will run from July of this year to July of next year. And so we're gonna have ongoing engagement with the public, and we'll continue to evaluate the data, and we're doing surveys, and we'll do survey results. And we're just really trying to understand how effective this program has or has not been. And so we had some objectives: key performance indicators, measure, and data analysis. The bottom line here is that you're really trying to get tonnage and you're trying to get participation. So those are the 2 key metrics that we're using. We have a whole bunch of ways to track whether our educational material.
That's what I was about to do. And write it on the side too.
So we're trying to figure out whether, we have metrics to figure out whether or not where they see the information. We're doing some survey, but they also have QR codes. So when they click a QR code at a bus shelter sign, we know that's where they got the information. So we're just trying to track where people are getting information. But the bottom line here is it really is participation and tonnage, which are the key metrics that we're trying to measure. So this is just an example of where we were tracking some of the data, where it was as far as some of the output and outreach, efforts we were trying. So this is the dashboard that came from the vendor that provided the containers. It really wasn't very helpful. It's more designed for optimizing a collection route for whether it be trash or recycling containers, which is kind of different than what we're doing. So we designed our own dashboard, and this was done in-house. And what this does, it shows that we have up here in the right-hand corner, this is the number of participants. You can see the most popular day is Sunday, followed by Monday. You can see the most popular time is 7 p.m. But you can see how the number of openings is continuing to grow, and also the number of participants month by month. This is the dashboard we have to actually collect on the tonnage side. So when each litter collector goes and recovers one of the internal bins, they replace it with another bin and bring that bin back and weigh it, so we know the exact weight associated with the location as we go through the program. And so this is the latest dashboard we created, and this is really for the collection staff. So they know this is the current fullness level of the container. And again, at 80%, they go to brown, and 100% they lock so nobody can access them. But every morning when our staff comes in, we ask them to go to this dashboard to kind of figure out how many containers they need to take based on which containers are either full or nearing fullness levels that need to be emptied. Not everything is going to be popular with everybody. We've had some good PR. Biocycles, had an article on us. Our local newspaper or online newspaper, Arl Now, had some information. But we have a lot of snarky people in Arlington. You can see some of the comments here. And the one guy talking about his banana peel and how he's not going to walk out to discard his banana peel. But everybody else was supportive, and in this one particular brewer. But you're going to have a mixed bag of reaction. And there's always going to be the doubters that just question what you're trying to accomplish. So we have some bin management protocols. So the carts are emptied whenever they turn red or brown. When something happens from a technology perspective that it's not working, we actually put it as red as we try to maintain it. So again, somebody's not going to go to this container expecting to be able to put their food scraps when it's not going to work. So whenever we get any kind of indication there's a technical problem, we turn them red internally. We just, can do that. All of the bins, regardless of whether they're full or not, are emptied on Friday. That's just to make sure we set up ourselves for the weekend. We do have weekend staff that goes and responds to containers, but we just want to make sure we have the best opportunity to get the containers through the weekend as possible. In addition to emptying all the containers on Friday, we actually wash every container, internal and external, on Fridays, just to make sure we're maintaining a good appearance of the containers. We also have a lot of supporting infrastructure that we built over time. As you can see on the left, that is what one of the internal bins looks like. Because food scraps, as you know, is pretty heavy, some of these bins are weighing up to 130, 150 pounds. So we have pickup trucks with lift gates. So again, we're not going to have these guys lift these heavy containers onto a truck. They just roll it onto the lift gate and it's elevated in the truck. We do have an in-vessel composter in our earth products recycling yard. We're actually in the process of building a second one. And so we're able to bring those food scraps back to the county. It doesn't cost us anything to dispose of it. We process that material, make our own compost, and make that available both to the public and also to our parks department and our roads department as they're, building or, doing various things. And then the last component of our system on the far right is a cart washer. So every cart that comes back gets washed before it's put back in place. So the carts are clean. As I said before, the containers are cleaned every Friday. So it's a very sanitary and relatively clean system, so we don't have any odors around any of the containers. So we've learned a lot so far. Planning. You can see all the different things you need to think about when you're planning this. It's not easy to deploy any kind of new program. It's critically important that your program is reliable and it's convenient for people. So that's why we're so concerned about whether the containers don't work, because if someone goes to a container with his bag of food and it doesn't work, what does he do with it? He has to either go back to his apartment or he throws it in the trash. So reliability is critically important to us. And lately our containers over the last couple of months have been very reliable after we kind of worked through the initial bugs. And so we're very happy with them right now. We've collaborated with a lot of different groups, our transit group, our communications group, our libraries group, to help support this effort. As I said before, the technology has to work. If people are going there and it's not working, they get frustrated and just won't use the program anymore. So you want to minimize that risk. One of the mistakes we did make, you want to make sure the materials are timeless. So you want to have the poster that links to a QR code somehow, that then that material is dynamic. So it links back to our website, that it's easy to make changes. So initially we said there are 7 locations for these containers. Well, now there are 14 locations. And so that's just one of the things that we said, hey, click this, QR code to know where the locations are. And it went back to our website. Our website could be dynamic and we could add or subtract locations at a whim. So again, try to make your materials timeless. There is a lot of staff training required for this, as far as, looking at the website to make sure they're tracking the container fullness, the fact that how do they service the containers, how do they maintain them, those kind of things. Graffiti prevention, we talked about that earlier, just the density of the wrap is important, and also have graffiti removal materials if in fact it ever happens, because you don't want the containers to look bad. And then one of the problems we're having, you have to be prepared for success. What happens if everybody says this is the greatest thing in town and you expected to empty them once a week and you find yourself in some cases emptying them every day? So you need to be prepared for being successful. So we have gone with Big Belly, but there are more and more people getting into this area. There's Compost Now and Metro Store. And so that's good from a pricing perspective because there's more competition. The different containers have different capabilities, and you need to make sure that whatever container you buy suits the capabilities that you're looking for. And also just helps to provide people with just ways to manage it internal to their apartment as well. And with that, I am going to stop sharing and we'll answer any questions that people may have.
So Erik, a couple of quick questions just as I was listening to your presentation. The first one struck me, the conversation about calling it food scraps rather than compost. We just had a meeting, actually it was a facility tour at the Montgomery County Recycling Center with the Maryland Environment, Education, and Energy Committee. And one of the issues that we talked a lot about was behavior modification of the citizens. And one of the observations was that it seems more effective when you can show the citizen what the benefit of whatever the step may be is that you're taking with your process, whether you're turning an aluminum can into a new aluminum can or a recycled bottle into something else, or in this case, food scraps into compost. And I didn't know if in your marketing system, if they'd really talked about not just, and I think that's a great notion, let's call it food scraps, not compost, because people don't have compost in their house they're going to put in a bin. But helping them understand that, by the way, this creates a product that has a value beyond going into this bin.
Yeah, I mean, you could say deposit food scraps, make compost. I mean, but again, just by having the word compost, it confuses some people. But I do think it's important that you tie what you are doing for a reason on the back end. And so again, we tell people that we bring this material back, we make compost that's used in our, garden, community gardens, it's used in our parks departments when they, do various flower beds. And so, and also the fact that it's available for them to come and get, that we have free, availability of this material. I think all those things help, and we talk about those things as well.
Yeah. Another quick question. In the snarky comments, somebody mentioned non-compostable or non-food scraps landing in the bins. I noticed the bins on the outside said food scraps and food soiled paper. I can't remember, and I apologize if you mentioned this, but do you have a sense of the contamination rate in the?
So we have almost zero contamination, just because of the fact there has to be intentionality to do this. So the one contamination event that we had was somebody who I'm sure thought they were doing right, brought us kitty litter. And I'm sure on that kitty litter said organic kitty litter on it. And this person said, hey, that's perfect. Yeah. So that's the only example of over, hundreds and hundreds of collections of these various containers, the only example of contamination I'm aware of. So by providing the bag, providing some good guidance, pictures and graphics that says what goes in these things, and the fact that these cans have to be intentional because you have to go and use your phone to get access, we have not had contamination problems.
Okay. Shannon, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Eric, it was a great presentation. I just wanted to touch base. You said that you're using this for community gardens and throughout the county, or sorry, throughout the county to distribute to your DOT and whatnot. Have you had to certify the materials that you're generating, or is this something because you're using it in-house, Virginia DEQ doesn't require that?
Well, we do actually go through annual testing to stay for quality assurance through the same, U.S. Composting Council, but we don't have a requirement from an official certification through DEQ for our material, but we do test it just to make sure, it's not anything strange.
And the Department of Agriculture doesn't mandate that either? I'm just trying to understand the difference between Maryland and Virginia. That's all.
Yeah, not that we're aware of, but now that you mentioned that, I will check that. But no, we haven't had that issue or concern before.
And also, Shannon, we should be clear that most of it is set out just for people to pick up. So it's kind of going to residents and even our community gardens. We're not delivering it. We're not, again, they're allowed to come and get it, but it's kind of like we make no promises. So we put it out. Yeah.
I'll just say that in the Maryland Department of the Environment does not certify it. It's not required under our requirements, but it is through our Department of Agriculture if it's even distributed. So that's why I was wondering if there was a mandate within Virginia or not. Just curious.
We will check that because you mentioned it, but no, we have never been, concerned about that or heard anybody raise that concern in Virginia.
Thank you. David, your question, David Brosh?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for organizing this meeting today. I live in University Park, Maryland, which is just near the campus. I'm also on the Solid Waste Advisory Commission for the county. And what we're trying to do right now, some of the commission members, is get some of our municipalities to start composting. We have a composting program here in the county, but it's for the unincorporated areas. We've got 3 or 4 towns that are doing some composting, but none of it's mandatory. And this morning I attended an event in Laurel. They're going to have a mandatory program beginning in January or into July of 2025. And you may have already talked to Michelle Blair. She's working on all these same issues that you've been talking about. I was a little surprised, but maybe I shouldn't be, because it sounds like you're doing regular collection of food waste. I thought these the bins would be much larger, but I guess if you're collecting them and you've got a way to determine that they're full, then I guess they don't have to be that big. That was one of the things that kind of surprised me. And we've got a couple of towns, College Park and Hyattsville, that have a lot of apartment units. So some of the things you're trying to do now may be very helpful as we try to push composting in those jurisdictions. Thank you very much. I guess that's not a question, but
yeah. But thank you. But Arlington, fortunately, geographically is very small. We're only 26 square miles. And so, and again, we have litter collectors every day in these various zones, which make it easier. I can imagine if it's in a rural, broadly dispersed area, it just makes it more challenging. Mm-hmm. And then potentially you'd go with larger containers, but those containers work because also just the weight issue was a concern. And again, food scraps is very heavy. And we are weighting these things out really before we're, even though they say they're 100% full, they're still about 10 inches from the top of that container. And so again, I think it actually works what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gina Vanderwell, you have a question, please.
Sorry, I was a little bit late, so I might have missed this. But did you talk about how many staff members that you need to deal with collection and cleaning? And also, did you get any pushback because this system does require the use of cell phones? Was there anyone in the community that thought that was maybe inaccessible?
So the reality is no, as far as the cell phone utilization. We do have one of our drop-off locations that doesn't require, it's actually at our Earth Products Yard. So there is another opportunity for people who, but it isn't as convenient. But again, Arlington, again, is very small as far as 26 square miles. So we did not have to bring on additional staff. What I explained earlier was that we have 7 litter collection zones throughout the county. And the litter collector in that zone is responsible for managing the container in his zone. Unfortunately, one of them has about 7 or 8 of the containers in that particular zone. So it's not equitable from that perspective, but it seems to work because not every container fills up every day. In the dashboard, I showed kind of where people can anticipate, hey, it looks like they're going to be, 6 containers that need to be emptied today. So they can plan on and go in their trucks and actually bring the extra containers along with them and then switch them out as part of their route, because they go to the bus shelters anyway, just from a cleaning perspective. So it's not like they're adding a new location. It's just a new activity as part of their already established routes.
Erik, building up on that question, have you done any comparisons with other municipalities that have implemented programs like this to see how population density and usage run?
So we are the second place in the country to do this. New York City started it. We're second. And I think, where's the third place? Is it Indianapolis or Kansas City? Where is it, Adam, the third one?
Kansas City, but theirs is a little bit different because it's sort of, it's just 3 containers, and Kansas City geographically is much, bigger than us, and they just put them at community centers. So I don't even know if they're locking or anything, but so New York is the only analog we have, which also is just a very different beast than Arlington, but.
And New York is not good about sharing. We've reached out to try to get a lot of their information just so we can do those comparisons, and we haven't been successful in getting information. And even though we've asked Big Belly to say, hey, can we just provide them even, the data from their sources, and they just haven't been able to do that. So yeah, we'll share information and data with whoever else starts these things just for comparison purposes, but we have not been able to benchmark against others yet.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. Adam, I don't know if you saw anything there that needed some kind of reaction.
No, nothing came up.
Okay, well, in that case, let me go ahead and thank everybody for joining us today. And I think we have a big round of applause to Erik and Adam. Excellent job with the presentation and the content, and really interested in seeing how this moves along over time. Maybe we'll have to do this again in a year to see what the results look like, and see if this is something that can be replicated in other areas, because I'm sure lots of people are looking at this hoping that may be the case. So big round of applause for Erik and Adam. Thank you very much, guys. And please, we're done for the day, but make sure you mark June 9th on your calendar for our conference. And as I mentioned, we'll be having a number of webinars coming up in the spring, and we'll be posting a copy of this webinar on our website probably by Monday, maybe sooner. And you're welcome to go there and take a look at it. We'll send an email out to the world, letting everybody know it's available when that's done. And of course, you're welcome to share that recording with any and all who may be interested. So with that, Erik, Adam, again, thank you so much for participating today, and everybody else, thank you for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.